This podcast is recorded on the traditional lands of the Bunurong and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to their elders and acknowledge their connection to this land. There's no justice without First Nations justice. Welcome to the Second City, where every week we'll be asking and trying to answer, if the first city falls, how do we want to live together in the second city? Hi Alex, hi Lerna.
Hello.
Hi, happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
So, how are you both feeling in the age of information overwhelm? It's a lot, right?
I'm fucking overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Yes, I've stepped off the grid and potter in the garden.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds amazing. We'll talk about the garden later. Because actually our mulberries are in bloom right now, which is wonderful. To give us a little bit of a wrap, we're kind of in a polycrisis. And so there's not only a lot of information available, but there's a lot going on that we're bearing witness to, right?
And some of it's deliberate and some of it's not deliberate in terms of the overwhelm. So just the nature of the new technologies available means that everyone is contacting you all at once about everything. There's also deliberate complexity around a lot of products in order to trick you into paying more than you should. And then there's the really nefarious stuff with, you know, the people who like to spread disinformation, who have a policy of flooding the zone so that it's not to necessarily trick you in one direction or the other all the time, but it's to make you question reality completely.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things going on. First of all, there's a lot happening that is newsworthy. Second of all, there's a lot being provoked to create noise.
Exactly.
And then the other and really disastrous component is that it's now incredibly difficult to know what's real and what's truth. Yeah.
Exactly.
How on earth... this conversation reflects how I feel in general, which is like, how the hell do we want to unpack this today?
And
where do we begin?
Then we have to squish in AI into that as well.
Exactly,
and
Anna.
Then that's just like chucking everything out into the air and trying to catch it all.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so
I don't know where to start.
I don't know where to start either, so I'm just going to refer to the notes. First of all, how has it impacted us? And then why do we think this has happened? What are the causes that are driving this informational nightmare?
Oh, well, I just want to say that I was always someone that followed reputable news sites and, you know, never went off on conspiracy theories or anything like that. But now, since the introduction of AI, I am questioning every single thing that I see, that I hear. And it's almost like, is this real or is this not real? So even if it's something that is a legitimate article, I am now questioning it, whereas I used to not previously. And that is a concern.
Yeah. I remember when in the election campaign I was door knocking, and at some point I realised that we are living next door to each other in entirely different universes of reality. Completely different understandings of what's happening in the world and interpretations of what's happening in the world based on what the algorithms are driving toward us. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Like people are getting fed what feeds into their opinions and worldview, and to them it is fact. You know, there are examples that support their worldview and opinions.
Exactly.
And then on the other side, someone with the complete opposing opinions and views are also being given evidence that this is how the world is. And so they're coming, I guess, with true hearts, and they're passionate about their beliefs, and both of them are equal in their beliefs. Like, you know, like they both believe as strongly to how they see the world.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a fellow in my DMs, you know who you are, James, and we have a very different perspective on something, and we're just sending each other video evidence to back ourselves up, and it's this pointless, totally pointless. Nothing he sends me will persuade me, and nothing I send him will persuade him. And I think he's probably lovely. He's probably a really nice person, and we're all very decent human beings, but here we are in this breakdown of reality.
We call it in the game motivated reasoning, and it is so powerful. We like to think we're all rational actors, but we're all this really complex amalgamation of identity and affiliation and loyalty and all this stuff that gets in the way of being able to assess things as though we were some sort of machine. And so we will work really, really hard to avoid what's also known in the game as cognitive dissonance, the things that don't match our
Mm.
self-conceptions or our conceptions of the world. And motivated reasoning is just such a powerful driver. We're all susceptible to it. Doesn't matter how smart, how dumb, all of
Like,
us.
yeah, like I always, when we talk about the people that watch Fox News, okay, well, yes, they're watching Fox News and that's all they watch. So to them, that is their reality. So that they come to face the world from their heart with that in their minds, that this is the way the world is. Like, I don't look at them as coming out to be malicious people. The whole MAGA movement, they're not bad people. They're coming there thinking that they are doing the right thing. I'm not defending them, but you have to figure out, like, where are these differences with us coming from? And surely as human beings, we're all coming from an honest, true place. I don't think any human is, any decent human is coming out to hurt their neighbour.
Exactly, the liars versus the lied to, right? So previously we were discussing how only a really small proportion of humanity are actually psychopaths, and most people are really, really good. Um, but that small proportion of like people that have what we call the dark triad, so they've got high levels of psychopathy, Machiavellianism, basically they're manipulative, narcissism. They don't mind lying and they don't mind hurting people with lies as long as they're accruing power or stuff. And so the liars, I think we can call them in our conception bad people, but they're really, really few. Most people who believe things that aren't true and even potentially dangerous and harmful are the lied to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that brings us to this moment in history where the information landscape is so diffuse. And Alex, I think you've called it decomposing information landscape, which then provides this incredible fertile soil for people who would misabuse our tribal loyalties, our fractured self-identities.
Yeah, especially when, your loved ones and your friends end up, watching Sky and Fox and start becoming, believing those things. And it's like, what the hell's, like, this really happened during COVID, all the anti-vaxxers. And it's like, what the hell's just happened? Like, what's happened to you? When these are people that, you're getting friendships and families getting split in the middle based on what you're watching, what you're reading, and the information that is coming to you. So I don't know how in this new era we can fix it. I don't know. I don't know, but it's so damaging.
Yeah, we saw that in COVID, didn't we?
Yeah.
Where some
That's
people,
where it kind of took off.
I felt that too, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, when a portion of the population were just grateful that somebody had a plan, but then there was another portion of the population who felt controlled, and frightened.
I think there was a real class divide as well, because if you could
Yes.
work from home,
Yeah.
and you could kind of shut yourself off and you had the money to order things in and get someone else to take the risk of going shopping. Like the pandemic was maybe stressful, maybe it was rough on marriages, and but assuming you had an okay partnership and assuming you had enough money and the ability to work from home, you kind of got through the pandemic okay, and it really kind of suited your worldview to have all these restrictions in place because it was keeping you and your loved ones safe and healthy. But if you're a frontline worker and you're getting fined for stuff because they were way over policed, people who were in poorer areas compared to middle class and wealthy people. So you were penalised, you had to face all this risk. And also when stuff goes wrong for you, the state isn't often there for you in terms of supporting you with health or mental health or other elements of your well-being. So why should you all of a sudden trust the state that's finding you and punishing you to be doing the right thing by telling you need to put something in your body?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, and I mean, as you say, there's a class element there, isn't it? I found working from home to be a positive impact on my mental health because I have a nice outlook here, and my 5 kilometres of air included some beach. But if you're in the middle of the burbs in a little box of an apartment, then staying in it for 24 hours, 23 hours a day. I feel like I definitely dawn on people whose experience of that lockdown was really horrific, and traumatic, really traumatic. And then against this backdrop, we see this rise in authoritarianism and extreme views, and misinformation.
So I don't know, how do we go about filtering what is real and what isn't real? Is it... I don't know. I have no idea how to go about it.
So the most interesting framing I've heard of where we are at the moment informationally is that we're in the second information crisis. If we understand that the first information crisis was the invention of the printing press. When the printing press was first invented, it wasn't that enlightenment spread like wildfire. You had actually witch burnings. You had this mass insanity, because now any dickhead with access to a printing press can publish his pamphlets and convince people of really terrifying, scary, wrong things. And eventually human society kind of evolved to cope with it, and we got mass education as an end result. But there were some burnt witches along the way. There was a schism in Christianity along the way, really wars, big upheaval. And what I'm hoping, and part of what I hope our project does, is that we can make the pathway as gentle and non-violent as possible to get to that other side. So we can get there without people getting hurt as much as is humanly possible. And I think humans are inherently resilient. So we know that we're being inundated. And so people now are having these self-protective mechanisms of switching off and then finding trusted sources. Now, sometimes those trusted sources aren't great, but more and more we're kind of being discerning about who we're listening to, what we're listening to, and erecting those filters around us.
So there's sort of simultaneously a great democratization of communication, but then also we have to figure out as a species how to work out what is a trustworthy voice as per the printing press era. So that gives me a little optimism in general, though, because then you sort of think, well, like the internet, there was the printing press, then there was the internet, then there was social media, and now there's AI. And we have somewhat adapted to all of those different new developments, right? I mean, you might know that OpenAI just dropped Sora 2, which is where you can make, it's like cinema quality deepfake video, right? So utterly, so the first AI articulations of the girl doing the gymnastics, and she's got at some points eight legs and 14 heads when she's flipping. And now they would say that this modern version, this Sora 2 version, I heard it described as basically just the physics are better, right? So it's just much more realistic. It leans into the reality of the laws of physics, but the cost is that it then is incredibly difficult to tell it as a fake. So, and you can insert real people into fake scenarios or bend real people to whatever fake scenario you want. So with no consent, of course, for the person that's in it. And that's I can't, in my mind, work out how we're going to figure out how to, there are different ways of knowing things. One of them is to see it. Yeah. The other is an authoritative source. If someone shows you something as a video or a photo, that used to be as good as seeing it for yourself, and that's no longer the case.
We can't hear it for ourselves either with the voice replication stuff.
That's it, yeah.
Maybe smell is our only sense that we will be able to trust. Because, boy, I know when someone's been revolting in my house. But anyway, that's another story.
Scratch and sniff phones are still a way away, are they? That's a relief. Phew. There's something that stays in the concrete. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, well, and even I mean, on that note, how long before robotics delivers real life touch experiences too?
Right.
And I can only imagine the technology that's going into that sort of a service. I mean, notwithstanding the copyright issues, which are a whole other conversation involving, the arts, music, obviously, and film and all those things, ignoring all of those conversation points, which are very important. Yeah, how do you even know what is real anymore? And maybe, like the printing press, we will adjust and adapt as a species and figure out. I mean, I assume we're going to have to make rules.
Yeah, like just out of interest, what was the time frame of the printing press and when people, could start telling bullshit
question.
stuff? Like, is it years, decades, weeks, months? Just so we can have a rough idea of the time frame.
How long are we in this?
The answer is relatively quickly, and never.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? So people, because of motivated reasoning, are always going to be susceptible to lies. It's just like, how quickly can those lies spread? How concentrated are like the single points of informational failure as well. So in a sense, we're in a much better position than we were in, people are comparing today to Nazi Germany a lot because of the rise of fascism. But if you think about what the information systems looked like then, it was this unitary point in human history. We've never had it where like all information was able to flow through like this single point. It was so concentrated. Now it's really, really hard to kind of
Control
get
it.
propaganda that reaches everybody. It just,
Yeah.
you can't do it anymore.
But with social media and stuff, you could use it as a weapon. Like if you just put one video or a message that we are getting attacked by this certain regime or, country or whatever with video evidence, and then that will run like wildfire through the community, and then you get your uprising when there is nothing like that in existence. And isn't that a risk? Like, couldn't that happen?
Well, it did happen and it didn't work in Iran. So during the 12-day war between Iran and Israel, Israel launched this really sophisticated information operation, and it had people on the ground in Iran, agents as well, trying to cause an uprising and the collapse of the theocratic state there. And lots of Iranians really, really hate the theocratic state. It's authoritarian. It's not a nice regime, and they want, so many of them want democracy and something different, but they knew that this was a propaganda effort, and they did not take the bait.
So how did they know?
Because we know, like, we're smarter than we think we are.
Okay.
Right? And so the people in my groups, I will give them the most carefully researched, massaged justifications for various things. And they're so clever. They will find a million ways around it, in and out, if they don't want to believe it. So we come into this world with sort of our personalities, in a sense, almost hardwired. And then we've got all these values that are inculcated by like family and community and friends. And we have a set of beliefs, and we know to an extent right from wrong as well. And a lot of that does tend to be pretty stable in terms of being kind and generous and hospitable. Like, these things cross cultures. They're pretty firm as part of the human condition, because this is how we evolved.
Yeah.
Right. And so to get us to go against that, you can get it to happen in short bursts, but to have it as a sustained thing, we've never seen that.
That's good.
It is. There's also a really interesting thing happening right now, right? So, like, Trump is trying to create and provoke insurrection in states in order to enact martial law, right? So to create violence on the street. And he posted, I think, video footage from a situation months ago in Florida to try and pretend like it was Chicago. And, it didn't fly because sleuths on the internet exposed it and found it out. And so then I suppose it's a question of the pub test, right? Like, the pub test is majority common sense. So there will be, as Alex said, about the printing press, it sort of happened quite quickly, but also never, which is that you can never 100% solve this misinformation problem. But maybe the pub test is achieved quite quickly. Majority rules.
That's right.
Same in the pandemic, right? Here in Victoria, we're the most locked down city in the world, I think, for a while here in Melbourne. And yet majority ruled. Majority of us still said this is the right thing to do to protect the vulnerable, even if a vocal minority would never be brought on board. And I suppose that gives me then some hope. It's like we don't need everybody to agree. Yeah. We just need majority rules to pass the pub test at some point.
Yeah. This is giving me hope too, this conversation.
Yeah. Even though it's slop out there. Yeah.
I don't want to give the impression that every single person I talk to every single night is always clever and always right. Because they're not. Like, some of them have really weird beliefs, and some of them I want to sit them down and have like a very stern talking to. But on the whole, most get it at the deep level, even if they don't know exactly how it works or why it works, or they don't have the details, but you can give them the details and then they assimilate that into their fundamental worldview. And most of them are so good and smart and decent.
And then again, that goes to the whole pub test. You know, it is. You are going to have that, small percentage that are going to go opposite to the pub.
Exactly.
Verdict. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's reassuring.
It is. Even like in our DMs this week after posting some content on Instagram, and I had people from America message and say, actually on the ground, things are much more hopeful than it might seem from afar. And it does make me think that actually maybe sometimes it does take one awful experience to mobilise a million beautiful experiences.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, that happened in lockdown.
Yes,
lockdown brought the neighbours all out. Everyone. It was this sense of community, and everyone was kind, and it was like you were literally picking flowers and fruit and stuff from each other's gardens and speaking to each other. And in our wildest dreams, would we have ever have dealt with our neighbours or people in our street? Like we didn't even know each other, for goodness sakes, And that's what happened in that really challenging period.
So true, we shared our mulberries. So the big terrible thing that's sort of happening at the moment, as I see it, in the information landscape is this sort of flooding the zone stuff that is coming out of authoritarian administration, specifically, I think, for us in the West, Trump. And this idea that I wrote down that has come from Silicon Valley, which is move fast and break things, right? So there's just such a slew of things that are happening, executive order after executive order, doing damage after damage after damage. And just the overwhelm that comes from all of that information. I feel like it's changing the way I'm responding in my life. And I've read somewhere that that younger generations are spending less time on their phone, which might be another kind of a good outcome of like, well, if the information landscape gets so unbearable and toxic, then maybe people will withdraw from social media spaces and try and go and heal somewhere outside.
Yeah, I'm seeing evidence of that. People like throwing away the phone and seeking real life connection and real life community. Like, this is a really exciting stage. Like, maybe this is going to save my kids. They're going to be young adults in this new age where they're calling it nostalgia, for the olden days. Like when my girls watch Stranger Things, that's like, oh, you were so lucky to be a teenager in the 80s. Oh. It's like, they look at our lives without any, phones, nothing, where you could just be out living in the moment, going to a concert and living the concert through your real eyes, not through your phone. They look at that world as the best thing. Oh, you had the best life. And slowly now we're seeing, the young adults seeking that and creating that real life meeting. So this could be a good thing that comes out of this system overload.
Yeah, system glitch. Move on, do something different, go outside.
So people, because we're seeing it in the research as well, that people are getting off platforms if and when they can. There's sometimes a class divide there as well. So if you're living in the outer suburbs and working insane hours and The commute takes forever. Sometimes you're just so exhausted when you get home. There is nothing that you can do other than just like doom scroll. People with a bit more privilege and bandwidth are more likely to say like I'm doing everything I can to get off the platforms because it's not good. People know. And if those of us who've got a bit of privilege and a bit of bandwidth can help make things fairer so that we take the burden off working people a little bit, a lot, if we can, then we give everybody the opportunity to start to leave the toxic spaces and have the opportunities to connect again.
So what are the information sources that you guys go to that you would recommend? What are the good mouthpieces that you've found or sought out?
I tend to go to journalists that I respect. Like I'll go straight to the source. Like, and this was another good thing that happened in lockdown. I didn't read the news. I listened to Dan. I would watch Dan's talk of the day to get the information straight from the horse's mouth. And I have found that I do that now. Like I will go on Blue Sky or whatever it is, and I don't go through the news. I go direct through the author, the writer, the journo. That's how I get my news.
Yeah. First person source.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the media is so biased and puts such a spin on everything, I don't trust any of it anymore. Every news outlet puts a spin on everything, or omits an important part so they can spin it the way their media owner wants to spin it. So I go to first source.
Yeah, that feels safe.
Yeah. I think it's a generational thing as well because as a Gen Xer I'm also looking for the journos that I trust. But I also try to keep a mental record of what people have predicted and how often have you been right about your calls? And I try not to let my personal feelings about them colour it, although, you can't help that. But also just to try to keep in the back of my mind who are they, what are their interests, because as much as I love you and the content you create or the journalism you produce or whatever, you know, what are you motivated by that will kind of lead to motivated reasoning yourself? But with all those caveats there's so much really exciting new media coming up in Australia, outside of you can either call it legacy media or prestige media. Of course, the ABC, Four Corners, is amazing, and they've got a bunch of amazing journalists like John Lyons. My God, he's so brilliant. But you've got all this new stuff happening. I really love the Lamestream Media podcast with Osman Faruqi and Scott Mitchell. I think it's really it's rigorous, it's fun, it's just informative, and I learn stuff, and I love that. I listen to academic podcasts when I can. I listen to a lot of podcasts, actually. Yeah, and I find myself developing what they call the parasocial relationships, where I feel like they're my friends, but they're fucking not. And everyone feels like that who's listening to them.
So you create a community. Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a community for people, a hot chips community.
That's right.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I listen to quite a lot of podcasts too, and I sort of deep dive into one podcast after another and then listen to all of the content and then move on to the next one. Yeah, I must say, I have a very long-standing relationship with the ABC, and Gen X grew up watching it on the beanbag with my dad, 7 o'clock news every night religiously, and have grown up on Keeping Up Appearances, ballet to Hyacinth Bucket.
I used to always watch the ABC, and I don't anymore. It just makes me mad. I feel like they've turned tabloid as well. That's how I feel. But having said that, I will scan through the headlines of the Herald Sun because I want to know what they're writing, and I want to know the news that their readers are getting. So I will, now and then always, have a look at it. Or if I'm in a cafe, I'll flick through it and see what are they, spewing out today. And
Yeah. Yeah, I always look at the covers of the newspapers as they're all on the stand in the IGA when I go in for milk or something. It's like, what are people reading?
yeah,
Yeah, whereas my kids wouldn't know a newspaper if it hit them in the face. They only understand it to be the thing you put in the guinea pig cage,
and actually, my kids get their news through TikTok.
Yeah, truly. Yeah.
That's how they get their news.
Yeah. Yes, so I wonder how discerning they are. And maybe they're quite discerning. Maybe young people's pub test is pretty solid.
Yeah.
Maybe their instinct for reality is actually really evolved because they have grown up amongst this.
So here's an interesting bit of nuance, I reckon, on this, that there's, in the same way that we've got a pub test where most people will get it right most of the time, it's like, I think young people in particular, like, they're going to get bits of information wrong every so often with this new way that they consume stuff. But if you look at how much more quickly they understood that Gaza was a genocide, for example, than older generations, they were just able to cut through the shit so much more quickly. Now, amongst that, I would see young people with like these insane conspiracy theories about why the genocide was happening, that, oh, it's actually about oil off the coast of Gaza. Like, no, it's not. It's just a bog standard genocide where one group wants to take the land from another group, and we've had this in history, right? However, just because they get like a bit here, a bit there wrong, doesn't mean that their overall impression is wrong. Their overall impression that there are powerful forces kind of arrayed to whitewash the attempt to wipe out a people is fundamentally correct, and they got there quickly.
It's funny you should say that, because when I was out door knocking, I door knocked a couple who had really gone down some rabbit holes with some conspiracies. And the one thing that I found that was just so shocking to me is that they were saying their foundational concern was the same as mine. It's just that the rationale was different. Their foundational concern was that the air and the water was polluted, that the politicians were corrupt, that you couldn't trust anyone in leadership anymore, and that someone was getting away with it, right? And I was saying the same things, but with a different set of rationales. Yeah.
Well, that's like the whole Baha'i movement, in the States. Yeah. Like they're concerned for their kids. If they come from a true, heartfelt, legitimate place that all mothers and, all people come from. They want their clean water. They want their clean food. And so, yes, so it's the same with that whole movement.
Yeah. The greatest truths are universal. We do all fundamentally want the same things for ourselves and our children. Yeah.
A big part of what we all want for ourselves as well, and for the group that we feel a part of, that I think gets missed a lot, is honour as well. And
that's interesting.
We'll do anything to avoid shame. And I think there are so many things about the way society's become structured, in this kind of techno-feudalist hellhole, or, whatever you want to call it, the neoliberal hellscape, whatever, because it makes life really hard in general, and it makes doing the right thing by the people you love and by yourself hard. It's very easy to feel a lot of shame a lot of the time, or shame for your people, and you'll go down all sorts of weird rabbit holes as part of motivated reasoning, as a response to cognitive dissonance in order to avoid those feelings.
Shaming is obviously a very powerful behavioural moderator, but so damaging, because then I always think it makes someone less themselves, not more themselves. And I know as a parent, I think about this a lot, like, how do you discipline a child? Well, shaming is a very effective way of doing that, but it makes them less themselves, not more themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
my
that's
God,
where
exactly.
the problem also arises, where, just say, like, the mega supporters, like the soy farmers in the States, they believed so much that Trump was going to save them.
Yes.
And now they're all, losing their farms and everything because of the tariffs. Like, how do you pick yourself up as a person who believed that without having to admit that you were fooled.
Exactly.
That
Exactly.
is so hard.
Learner, this is something we talk about in the research all the time, that people don't want to feel like they've been fooled, and they will do anything to avoid that particular shame.
Yeah, so you just dig yourself deeper into that.
Exactly.
So we need to be better at offering people an honourable way back
Yes.
to a different
Yes.
belief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The grace of having a second thought after the first thought that was wrong.
Because think about the shame cascade of the soy farmer, right? So the first shame is that because of the concentration of farming, it became economically more and more a precarious thing to be involved in. And just the Rust Belt in general in the US, the shame of losing jobs to automation and offshoring, and financialization and all these awful forces that are just so much bigger than any individual or even any single community. And then the shame of, have I gotten it really wrong with the person who I thought was going to save me from this? And now my business is doubly destroyed. And I get worried when I see on social media people taking a shit on podcasters like Joe Rogan or Theo Von, who are now saying, "Oh, Trump isn't what I thought he'd be." They're going, "Well, you should have known. You should have known. You're so dumb. You're so dumb." And it's like, oh, yeah, way to build a coalition against fascism. Like, do you want to be right, or do you want to make sure that fascism is defeated? What's more important here?
Yeah.
And actually that topic, I think it was about a month ago, that was on social media about Gaza, when people originally were saying, go Israel, whatever. And then they turned and said, no, actually what they're doing is really bad. This is a genocide. And people from the pro-Palestine side were saying, well, we told you from the beginning, so you want to come into our tent now. And it's like, well, yes, it might hurt, but isn't it good that they have seen the light now? And we should welcome them into our tent, because that is how you then grow your tent, kind of thing.
It's how you grow the power to stop something terrible, right? And you've got to have your eye on that prize. Like, how do we make it okay for people and stop terrible things from happening? And everything needs to be in service of that. Like, because, people who are neither Jewish nor Palestinian ask me a lot, how can people think that what Israel is doing is justifiable? How can people in your community think that? And I say, well, they're occupying a completely different information environment, that they're not hearing anything that you're hearing. And they're going, but how can that be? And then other people will ask me, well, if the Jews suffered a genocide, how, shouldn't they know better? And that's not actually how it works. So Jews suffered the humiliation and the shame of a genocide, and it's like, well, we're never going to be weak again. We're going to tell ourselves a bunch of national stories that kind of facilitate this idea that we are strong now and we will never ever again be subject to this. And then, I'm looking down the barrel of a future where we're going to have to deal with the national shame of what, well, I don't want to say Jewish people have done this, because it's not true. It's the Israeli state, and it's different from Jewish people, right? But the Israeli state is going to have to contend with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're going to need to give some people off ramps. We're going to need to be able to distinguish between who were the liars here and who were the lied to.
So I want to make the point that we started this conversation a long way ago.
Sorry.
No, this is really important. We started this conversation with the framework of identity that begets our belief system, that influences what we see and the algorithms that find us. And we're closing this conversation with a discussion about identity again, and an injury to identity, which is shame.
Oh, gosh.
Right? So
Amazing,
what is the healing of that injury? What does that look like? Let's talk about that, and maybe that saves the species.
The healing, I think, again, goes back to vulnerability. Oh. We have to permit...
Lerner brings it again.
Love you, Lerner.
We have to permit error. We're human. we're not perfect. We are allowed to be vulnerable and for our peers to be compassionate to us. And if we can allow this to thrive in society, well, then we are accepting of all. And we're accepting that, no, you're not perfect. So tomorrow when the politician comes and says, you know what, I was wrong, I want to change my policy, we don't have the media and everything bagging shit on them. It's like you're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to see that I was wrong, or I've matured and I see the world differently now. You're human. This is how we need to change our world.
I'm always so moved and impressed when people have the courage to say, I was wrong and I have a new way of thinking about it and this is my new perspective.
Yeah, that's not weakness.
No, that's incredible strength.
Yes.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Luna.
Oh my God. Both of you, Jesus. You're amazing.
You're amazing.
No, you are.
This is why we always need chips at these events.
We need some.
Yeah.
And a tea. A tea is important.
Yeah. All right. So the role of Second City in all of this, and the role of this podcast, and the role of the community that we're going to build is to just in our own little way, in our own little spheres, model this stuff, right?
Yes.
This vulnerable humaning, to treat ourselves the way, I mentioned earlier parenting, and I love to put that as the model of how I should care for myself. How would I parent my child who I love more than myself? This is how I will love myself. And in loving myself this way, then I can love others this way too. That only works if you've been well parented yourself. Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that carry trauma from their childhood. There are a lot of people that have to deal with a lot of shit first in order to then be able to live in this way. And I accept that. That's a lot of people. And it's hard. But I think if we can find a way to do it, it will make our societies better.
Yeah.
Because I only learnt this stuff, I don't know, this year, maybe a couple of years at the most. And before then, if anyone wants to go through my social media feeds, you'll see me be really strident and sometimes revolting to people who I disagree with. And if only I'd known then what I know now. But, again, it's all a learning curve for all of us.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
I agree, Alex. I was the same. I worked in a university. I was a snob. I used to think, oh my God, how can you vote like that? You're an idiot. But no, I have matured and grown so much. And I'm so much a better person now than I was, than 5 years ago.
It's powerful, isn't it? And then I think there's something that you can bring to bear, because someone once described it to me as if you speak from the scar, not the wound, right? Then a scar is doubly strong skin.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah. All right, well,
that's a perfect way to end.
That's kind of just the way to, I feel like we probably need to go back to our lives.